The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of machines. My name is Dylan, and at 35 years old, I never anticipated inheriting $11 million from my estranged uncle. I shifted uncomfortably, every bone in my body a reminder of the accident. Then, the door swung open. Adrian, my husband, entered, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman he now referred to as his wife. I steeled myself for their harshness, but nothing could have prepared me for the way she gazed at me, and screamed. It's astonishing how swiftly life can change. Just days before, I had been driving home, excited to share with Adrian that my estranged uncle had left me $11 million, a Victorian house, and a future I never dreamed possible. Instead of happiness, I encountered betrayal, abandonment, and a heartbreak that cuts deeper than shattered bones. My name is Dylan, and at 35 years old, I never expected to inherit $11 million from my estranged uncle. My relationship with Uncle Samuel was complicated, to say the least. He was my father's older brother, but they had a falling out decades ago over the family business. The divide was so profound that our families hardly acknowledged each other during rare holiday gatherings. Nevertheless, I cherished the memories of visiting his vast countryside estate as a child. Those fleeting visits always felt enchanting, with Uncle Samuel showcasing his collection of rare books and sharing tales of his business escapades abroad. Uncle Samuel was a self-made millionaire who constructed an empire in real estate development. His business savvy was legendary in our small town, yet his personal life was strikingly barren. He never married or had children, dedicating himself entirely to his work instead. What I didn't realize until much later was that he had been quietly keeping an eye on me over the years. "You remind me of myself at your age," he once remarked during one of our rare encounters when I was 12. "Smart, stubborn, and unafraid to voice your thoughts." After I graduated from college and moved away, Uncle Samuel began sending me birthday cards and the occasional letter. I would reply courteously, albeit briefly, feeling uncertain about how to mend the rift within the family. The letters included ordinary updates regarding his life, insights from his business, and occasional inquiries about my own. I never realized he was thoughtfully nurturing a bond with me, the niece he hardly knew. 6 months prior to the accident, Uncle Samuel received a diagnosis of advanced heart disease. Upon hearing the news from a distant cousin, I made the decision to visit him in the hospital. I recall how fragile he appeared, a mere shadow of the formidable figure from my childhood. Yet, his eyes sparkled when I entered the room. "Dylan," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I always knew you would return." That visit evolved into weekly meetings. We discussed everything from philosophy to politics, making up for lost time. He never brought up the feud with my father, and I never inquired. It felt as though we had mutually agreed to start anew. "Life is too short for grudges," he reminded me during one of our final talks. I learned that lesson too late. 3 months later, he peacefully passed away in his sleep. I grieved for him more profoundly than I had anticipated. As for Adrian, our love story commenced 7 years ago at an art exhibition downtown. I was there to write an article for the local lifestyle magazine where I was employed. Adrian was one of the featured artists, and his abstract paintings garnered significant attention. He exuded confidence, and there was a magnetic passion in the way he spoke about his work. "Art is about perceiving the world differently," he told me during our interview. "Finding beauty in chaos." We began dating shortly thereafter, and within a year, we exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony. We couldn't afford anything extravagant, but it was perfect for us. Adrian was determined to succeed as an artist, and I wholeheartedly supported his dream. I took a more stable position at an advertising agency to ensure our financial stability while he chased galleries and commissions. For the initial years, everything was wonderful despite our financial hardships. We lived in a simple apartment, saving wherever we could, while dreaming about the future. Adrian would paint late into the night, and I would edit copy for advertising campaigns. We were partners, each fulfilling our roles. However, the last 2 years had been different. Adrian's artistic career had stagnated, and the constant rejections seemed to change him. He became moody and withdrawn, sometimes disappearing for hours without any explanation. When I asked about it, he would snap that he needed space to think or was networking with other artists. Our bank account dwindled as he poured money into expensive materials for projects that never seemed to come to fruition. You just don't understand. The artistic process became his go-to excuse for any inquiries about money or his whereabouts. I was at work when I received a call from Benjamin Harrison, Uncle Samuel's attorney. Dylan Wallace. This is Benjamin Harrison. I'm managing the estate of Samuel Wallace. Would you be able to come to my office today? I agreed, expecting maybe a small memento or a letter. When Benjamin slid the will across his desk, I nearly fell out of my chair. Uncle Samuel had left me everything. His entire estate, valued at $11 million, plus the family property. He revised his will after your reconciliation, Benjamin explained. He was quite impressed with how you had built your life on your own terms. Attached to the will was a letter in Uncle Samuel's handwriting. Dear Dylan, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I've watched you grow from a distance, admiring your determination and kind heart. You have the same spark I once had, but with the wisdom I lacked. This money is a tool, not a solution. Use it wisely, be happy, and remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. With love, your Uncle Samuel. I signed the necessary paperwork in a daze, $11 million. It was an unimaginable sum. I could pay off our debts. Adrian could pursue his art without financial stress. We could buy a house, travel, and start a family. The possibilities were limitless. As I was leaving, I made a stop at a jewelry store and bought an expensive watch for Adrian, representing our fresh start. I chose not to inform him over the phone, as news like this warranted a proper celebration. I did call him, though, just to let him know I was coming home early with some good news. He seemed distracted, almost irritated. I'm kind of in the middle of something, Dylan. A new art project. Very experimental. This is important, Adrian. I will be home in 30 minutes. Fine. Just don't expect much of a reaction. I'm in my creative zone. I hung up, feeling a bit deflated but still thrilled. Once he heard the news, his mood would definitely shift. Little did I realize that this call would be one of our last normal conversations. The rain had just begun as I merged onto the highway, a light drizzle making the road shine under the afternoon sun. I remember turning on the radio to an upbeat song while I mentally rehearsed how I would share the inheritance news with Adrian. Perhaps I would ask him to close his eyes, place the watch in his hands, and then reveal the amazing news. I envisioned his face lighting up, the stress of recent years fading away as he understood we were financially free. I was so wrapped up in these thoughts that I nearly missed witnessing it unfold. A semi-truck 2 lanes over suddenly swerved, its tires skidding on the wet pavement. Time seemed to slow as I observed it jackknife, the massive trailer swinging toward me like a dreadful pendulum. I yanked the wheel hard to the right, but it was too late. The crash was deafening. Metal crunched against metal as my car spun violently. The airbag exploded into my face with shocking force. Amidst the chaos, I remember seeing the watch box fly open, the expensive timepiece sliding across the dashboard in slow motion. My last conscious thought was oddly about a roadside billboard promoting family insurance with the slogan, "Protect what matters most." Then, darkness. I woke up to the steady beep of heart monitors and the antiseptic smell that only hospitals possess, and my whole body felt as if it had been through a meat grinder. Even the act of breathing sent sharp pains through my chest. I attempted to move and instantly regretted it. "Easy there," a gentle voice warned. "You need to stay still." I struggled to focus my eyes on the woman in blue scrubs next to my bed. Her name tag read Rachel Winters RN. "What happened?" I rasped. "You were in a serious accident on Highway 65, Rachel explained while checking one of my 4 lines. You have been unconscious for almost 2 days. 2 days? The news hit me like a brick. My husband, does Adrian know I am here? Rachel's expression changed slightly. We contacted the emergency number in your phone and left several messages, but he has not come. Even in my drugged state, I felt a stab of confusion. Not yet, but I am sure he will soon, she added, though her tone lacked certainty. Later that day, Dr. Daniel Foster came to discuss the extent of my injuries: 3 broken ribs, a severe concussion, a compound fracture in my right leg that required surgical pins, along with various lacerations and contusions. You were extraordinarily lucky, he said. The driver of the truck that hit you did not survive. Lucky? I didn't feel lucky as I lay there, unable to reach my husband. I tried calling Adrian's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent text messages that showed as delivered, but they remained unanswered. Each hour that passed without a response heightened my anxiety. Rachel became my primary nurse and increasingly my confidant. She would check on me even when she wasn't assigned to my room, bringing extra pudding cups or just sitting with me when her shift allowed. Still no word, she asked. On the 3rd day, while helping me sit up to eat, I shook my head, wincing at the movement. I do not understand. Even if his phone died, he would know something was wrong when I did not come home. On day 4, I finally received a text from Adrian Heard about the accident. I'm really swamped with the breakthrough project. Will come by when things settle down. No inquiries about my condition. No offers of assistance, just silence. That doesn't seem right, Rachel frowned when I showed her the message. Do you have any friends who could check on him? I called my friend Melanie, but she sounded odd on the phone, making excuses for why she couldn't visit yet. When I pressed her about Adrian, she quickly changed the topic. By the end of the first week, my suspicions had grown. Using Rachel's tablet, I browsed social media and discovered something that chilled me to the bone. Adrian had checked in at Artemis Gallery, an upscale art club known for its affluent patrons, with a caption about celebrating new beginnings. With trembling hands, I dialed his number again. This time, he answered, his voice irritated with music blaring in the background. Adrian, I'm in the hospital. I've been here for a week. Where are you? There was a pause. Look, Dylan, I'm in the midst of something important. More important than your wife being in critical condition? Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, becoming colder. I don't have time or money for a loser, Dylan. Some of us are moving on with our lives. The call ended abruptly. I stared at my phone in shock, tears streaming down my face. What did he mean by loser? I had just inherited $11 million, and more importantly, I was his wife, hurt and alone. An hour later, Rachel found me crying and immediately called for a sedative. As the medication took effect, numbing both my physical and emotional pain, one thought kept swirling in my hazy mind. Something was very, very wrong. The days that followed Adrian's cruel phone call were the darkest of my life. I refused food, barely slept, and cried until I had no tears left. The physical pain from my injuries paled in comparison to the emotional wreckage. 7 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. With a dismissal so cold it felt like I was speaking to a stranger, Rachel grew worried enough to reach out to Dr. Jessica Parker, the psychologist at the hospital. A small woman with gentle eyes and a straightforward demeanor. Jessica didn't provide any empty reassurances. What you are going through is trauma on several levels, she clarified during our initial session. Physical injury, emotional betrayal, and the shock of unexpected abandonment. It's completely normal to feel as if you're drowning. Did he know? I asked out loud, not really anticipating a response. About the money, I mean. What money? Jessica inquired. I hadn't mentioned my inheritance to anyone at the hospital. It felt trivial compared to everything else that was happening. But now I was curious if it was the key to deciphering Adrian's actions. I inherited $11 million on the day of my accident, I explained. I was on my way to inform Adrian when the crash occurred. Jessica's eyebrows raised in surprise. That certainly adds another layer to consider. 2 days later, Melanie finally came to visit. She entered my room cautiously, holding a small bouquet of flowers and avoiding eye contact with me. "You look terrible," she blurted out, then immediately winced. "Sorry, that came out wrong. Why have you been avoiding me?" I asked her directly. The medications had dulled my ability to engage in social niceties. Melanie sank heavily into the visitor's chair, the flowers forgotten in her lap. "I didn't know what to say, Dylan. Everything is so chaotic. Please tell me what's happening with Adrian." She nervously twisted her wedding ring. "He is with someone else now. A woman named Aurora." The word struck me like another car crash. "What do you mean he is with someone else?" "We are married. He has been telling people you didn't survive the accident," she whispered, tears welling up. "He held a small memorial gathering at your apartment last week. I couldn't bring myself to attend." The room felt like it was tilting sideways. "He told people I am dead while I am lying here in the hospital." Melanie nodded sadly. "I only learned you were alive when Rachel called me yesterday. Adrian has blocked all your social media accounts. He has also changed the locks on your apartment." "Show me," I insisted. "Show me this woman." With some hesitation, Melanie took out her phone and opened Instagram. There he was, my husband, with his arm around a slender woman with dark hair. They were at an art gallery, champagne glasses in hand, looking every bit like a couple that had been together for a while. Something about the woman's face sparked a strange sense of familiarity. She appeared to be younger than me, perhaps in her mid-20s, stylishly dressed with features that somehow resembled my own. "Her name is Aurora Lauron." Melanie explained that she works as some sort of assistant at the Hayward Gallery. They met around 3 months ago, according to mutual friends. 3 months while I was visiting my dying uncle, and Adrian had been building a relationship with this woman. I felt a wave of nausea. "There's more," Melanie added, her voice dropping even lower. "People are saying they got married last weekend. Just a quick ceremony at the courthouse. Married. My husband had declared me dead and wed another woman within days of my accident." The enormity of the betrayal was overwhelming, and I couldn't process it. Rachel, who had been standing nearby, stepped in when she noticed my heart rate monitor spiking dangerously. "I think that's enough for today," she said, firmly guiding Melanie toward the door. "I'm so sorry, Dylan," Melanie called back. "I should have told you sooner." After she left, Rachel sat with me, her presence calming, as I tried to comprehend what I had just learned. "You need legal assistance," she finally said. "This isn't just betrayal, it's fraud." She was right. With her help, I called Benjamin Harrison the next morning. "Dylan, I was starting to get worried," the attorney said. "I've been trying to reach you about some troubling developments." "Let me guess," I replied bitterly. "My husband has been inquiring about my inheritance." "Not just inquiring, he came to my office claiming to be your next of kin, stating that you had died in an accident. He brought marriage certificates along with what seemed to be death documents, although they didn't withstand closer scrutiny." I said, "He's trying to steal my inheritance," as the pieces finally fell into place. "It seems that way, and he isn't acting alone. He arrived with a young woman whom he introduced as your sister, asserting that she should have partial rights to the inheritance." I automatically replied, "I don't have a sister," then I froze. "What was her name?" "Something like Aurora. A French surname." My thoughts raced. The familiar face. The resemblance that people had pointed out between us. The timing of her entry into Adrian's life, just as Uncle Samuel's health began to decline. "Benjamin, I need you to investigate this woman's background," and I need you to come to the hospital tomorrow. I suspect my husband is plotting something, and I need to be ready. That night, I hardly slept, my mind piecing together the fragments of this strange puzzle. How had Adrian known about the inheritance before I mentioned it? Why choose a woman who looked like me to execute this scheme? And why did she seem so familiar to me beyond just the physical likeness? By morning, a disturbing theory was forming, one so twisted I could hardly bear to think about it. I asked Rachel to set up a small camera in my room, supposedly for security reasons. Then I sent a text to Adrian's phone from Melanie's number, which she had allowed me to use. I know about the inheritance. Dylan is awake and remembers everything. You need to resolve this before she speaks. The reply came within minutes. We'll take care of it today. Delete this message. They were on their way, and I would finally get some answers. I spent the morning getting myself ready, both mentally and physically, for the impending confrontation. Rachel assisted me in sitting up properly in bed and adjusting my appearance to look a bit more vulnerable than I truly felt. Dr. Jessica advised me on how to maintain emotional control, no matter what might be said. Remember, you have the power here, she reminded me. Regardless of his words or actions, he can't take anything from you unless you permit it. Benjamin arrived at noon, briefcase in hand, and settled into the chair by the window, ensuring he wouldn't be easily seen by anyone entering. The small camera Rachel had set up was discreetly recording, its tiny lens focused on the foot of my bed. Are you sure you want to do this today? Benjamin inquired, worried about my still delicate state. We could manage this through the appropriate legal channels. I need to see his face, I responded. I need to comprehend why. At exactly 2 p.m., there was a knock on my door. My heart rate surged, the monitor revealing my anxiety, even though I appeared calm on the outside. Rachel squeezed my hand once before stepping back to position herself near the bathroom door. Adrian was the first to enter, clad in a blazer that looked expensive and unfamiliar to me. His hair was styled differently, and he sported a new watch that likely cost a fortune. The shift from a struggling artist to a wealthy sophisticate was startling. His expression upon seeing me was not one of surprise or relief, but rather annoyance, quickly concealed by a facade of concern. Dylan, he said, his tone dramatic. You are awake. We have been so worried. We? I questioned, my voice steadier than I felt inside. He glanced back toward the doorway, gesturing impatiently. A slender figure stepped into the room, remaining partially obscured behind him. I could only catch a glimpse of dark hair and a designer dress. You remember, Aurora, he said smoothly. Your cousin's daughter. I remained silent, observing as he advanced further into the room, his confidence increasing with each step. He had always been a performer at heart, convincing in whatever role he chose to adopt. Today, he had cast himself as the concerned husband. The doctors mentioned that your memory might be impacted by the accident, he continued. So many things have transpired while you were unconscious. Like you telling everyone I was dead? I quietly asked. His step faltered for a moment before he recovered. A dreadful misunderstanding. When you were first brought in, they feared you might not survive. I was heartbroken. Some people misread my sorrow along with the new apartment, the art gallery festivities, and the marriage license. His gaze narrowed a bit, calculating. You've been eavesdropping on rumors, darling. That's not beneficial for your recovery. What's important now is to ensure you get better and to address the financial matters at hand. He retrieved some documents from his inner pocket. The doctors indicated, you may not be able to manage your affairs for a while. I have some straightforward forms that authorize me to handle things while you recuperate. I almost had to commend the act. Had I been heavily sedated or disoriented, I might have fallen for his concerned performance, but I could see the chill in his eyes, the impatience in the way he extended the papers. You mean the 11 million I inherited? I inquired bluntly. His face momentarily changed. Surprise quickly replaced by a mask. You recall that? Yes, indeed. A wonderful blessing, but also a burden. Given your current state, the pressure of managing such wealth could hinder your recovery. How considerate of you to be concerned about that. He grinned, misinterpreting my composure for agreement. I have always prioritized your best interests, Dylan. Is that why you blocked my social media accounts, changed the locks on our apartment, and told my friends I was dead? Adrian's mask began to falter. You're mistaken. The medication. Show her the video, Benjamin suddenly said, rising from his chair. Adrian turned around, genuinely taken aback. Who the hell are you? Benjamin Harrison, Mrs. Wallace's attorney. And you must be the husband trying to defraud his injured wife. Benjamin placed his tablet on the bed tray, displaying security footage from his office, revealing Adrian and a young woman presenting forged death certificates and asserting inheritance claims. That's enough, Adrian snapped, reaching for the tablet. Do not touch that, Rachel cautioned, stepping forward. Hospital security is just outside. The woman who had lingered by the doorway finally stepped forward, her curiosity seemingly overpowering her caution. As she neared the bed, I caught my first clear glimpse of her face. The resemblance was even more pronounced up close. She had the same shaped eyes and a similar nose. Even her posture reminded me of my younger self. Yet, there was something more, something that sparked a deep, almost instinctual recognition within me. Aurora gazed at me, her expression shifting from anxious to bewildered to astonished. Her face paled dramatically as our eyes met. Oh my God, she murmured, her voice trembling. She is my mother. The room fell utterly silent. Adrian rushed towards her, seizing her arm. Shut up, he spat. Stick to the plan. But Aurora was entranced, gazing at me as if I were a specter. With shaking hands, she dug into her purse and retrieved a worn photograph. I have been searching for you my whole life, she said, her voice cracking as she extended the photo for me to see. The image depicted a teenage girl cradling a newborn baby. Her face was partially hidden, but it was unmistakably a younger version of me. A photograph I hadn't seen in 17 years, one I believed had been lost forever. As I gazed at the evidence of my most closely guarded secret, the room seemed to whirl around me. The beeping of the heart monitor quickened as pieces of a puzzle I never knew existed suddenly fell into place. My hands shook as I accepted the photograph from Aurora. The teenage girl in the picture looked so young, so frightened, her eyes red from tears as she held the tiny bundle for what she knew would be the first and last time. Where did you find this? I whispered. It was with me when I was adopted, Aurora answered softly. The only connection I had to my birth mother. I have carried it with me every day since I was old enough to grasp its significance. Adrian made another attempt to intervene. This is absurd. She is clearly confused and trying to manipulate the situation. Be quiet, Adrian, I said with a newfound authority that seemed to catch everyone off guard, including myself. For once in your life, just stop talking. I turned my attention back to Aurora, really examining her features. She had my mother's cheekbones and my eyes. How had I not noticed it right away? Maybe it was because I had spent 17 years trying to forget and push away the memory of the baby I had held just once. I was 18. I started my voice training as I spoke. A senior in high school with aspirations for college. My boyfriend at the time wanted nothing to do with a baby, and my parents were appalled by the scandal it would create in our small town. Aurora sat on the edge of my bed, completely captivated. They sent me to live with a distant aunt during the pregnancy. After you were born, they arranged for a closed adoption. I was allowed to hold you once, and someone took this picture. I had no idea they had given you a copy. My adoptive parents told me it was the only thing that came with me, Aurora explained. They were amazing people who never concealed the fact that I was adopted. When I turned 18, they supported my choice to look for my birth mother. How did you find Adrian? Benjamin asked, his lawyer's mind still trying to piece together the puzzle. Aurora looked awkwardly at Adrian, who stood stiff with anger by the window. I did not find him. He found me, she confessed. About 3 months ago, he approached me at the gallery where I work. He said he knew who my birth mother was. The pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. The memory box, I said, glancing at Adrian. You found it when we moved last year. Adrian remained silent, but his expression confirmed my fears. I had kept a small wooden box containing a few mementos from that time in my life, the hospital bracelet, a tiny hat, and a copy of that photograph. I thought I had hidden it well, but apparently not well enough. He told me you had been looking for me, too, Aurora continued. That you were wealthy, but estranged from your family, and wanted to reconnect, but were afraid of being rejected. And when did marriage come into play? I inquired, unable to hide the bitterness in my tone. Aurora turned red with embarrassment. It unfolded slowly. He was incredibly attentive, genuinely interested in helping me connect with you. When he proposed 2 weeks ago, claiming it would bring you joy to see me settled with someone you trusted, it felt romantic. Then my accident happened. Suddenly, I seemed to be worth more dead than alive, I concluded. Adrian finally spoke up. You have no evidence of anything. This is purely circumstantial and emotional manipulation. Benjamin cleared his throat. Actually, we possess quite a bit of evidence, including your attempts to access Dylan's accounts, forged death certificates, and now this recorded confession, not to mention bigamy, since you are still legally married to Dylan. What I don't understand, Rachel interjected, is why go through such an elaborate scheme? Why not just remain married to Dylan and enjoy the inheritance together? I gazed at Adrian, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time, realizing he never loved me. I was merely convenient, a steady income while he chased his artistic aspirations. But $11 million required a more intricate plan. The will has a special clause, Benjamin explained. If Dylan had passed away without children, a large portion would have gone to charity, but with a direct descendant, the entire inheritance would remain within the family, I concluded. And as Aurora's husband, Adrian would have control over those funds. Aurora abruptly stood up, distancing herself from Adrian. You used me. All those things you said about caring for me, about building a future together. Don't be naive, Adrian retorted. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. You wanted to find your birth mother, and I assisted. The money was merely a bonus. By declaring me dead and marrying my daughter, I asked in disbelief. Half the inheritance would have gone to her anyway once the relationship was uncovered, Adrian argued, his true nature now fully revealed, was merely hastening the process by engaging in fraud, Benjamin pointed out, and possibly murder if Dylan had succumbed to her injuries without regaining consciousness. Adrian's expression turned serious. You can't prove that. We don't need to, I replied softly. You've already caused enough harm. I turned to Aurora, whose life had evidently been shattered. I am truly sorry you got caught up in this. She wiped the tears from her eyes. All my life, I dreamed of finding my birth mother. Never like this. Adrian suddenly moved toward the door. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving. I wouldn't recommend that, Benjamin said calmly. Hospital security is waiting outside, and I've already filed preliminary charges. Leaving now would only add fleeing to the list. Just then, 2 security officers appeared in the doorway. Adrian scanned the room frantically like a trapped animal looking for a way out. Dylan. He made one last attempt, his voice adopting the gentle tone I had once cherished. We can resolve this. Consider everything we've been through together. That's precisely what I'm considering, I responded. Officers, this is the individual I mentioned. As they led Adrian out of the room, Aurora and I were left in an odd, tense silence. 17 years of separation loomed between us like an invisible barrier. I never stopped thinking about you, I finally said. Not a single day. The days following Adrian's arrest were a blur of legal meetings, police statements, and emotional discussions. Benjamin worked diligently to unravel the web of fraud Adrian had spun, uncovering that he had tried to access my bank accounts several times using forged documents. He was quite meticulous, Benjamin explained during one of our meetings in my hospital room. He had constructed a paper trail indicating you had discussed the inheritance with him, even going so far as to forge emails between the two of you. How much trouble is he in? I inquired. Not out of concern for Adrian, but to grasp the full extent of his crimes, charges of fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, bigamy, and possibly conspiracy loom over him if we can establish that he intentionally left you without medical care following the accident. He faces a lengthy prison sentence. The sense of betrayal still feels unreal, as if I were witnessing someone else's life fall apart. After 7 years of marriage, I realized I had never truly known the man I shared my life with. What about his marriage to Aurora? I inquired. He is already in the process of filing for annulment. Since your marriage to Adrian was never legally terminated, his union with Aurora is not valid. Additionally, the evidence of manipulation and deceitful intent makes this a clear-cut case. Aurora has been coming by daily since the confrontation. Our first encounters were awkward, filled with long pauses and tentative inquiries. How do you start a relationship with the daughter you gave up 17 years ago, especially in such strange circumstances? I asked her about her parents during one of her visits. Your adoptive parents, I meant. Aurora's expression softened. They are amazing. My dad teaches high school science, and my mom is a librarian. They always ensured I felt loved and wanted. I'm really happy to hear that, was all I ever hoped for you. They want to meet you when you are ready, she added cautiously. They never spoke badly of you. They always told me you were very young and wanted me to have opportunities you could not provide. Tears filled my eyes. They sound like extraordinary people. Why did you never try to find me? She asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her. I took a deep breath. Partly shame, partly because I thought a clean break would be better for you, and partly because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you would hate me for giving you up. That you would ask questions I did not have good answers for. That seeing you happy with another family would break my heart all over again. Aurora reached out tentatively and took my hand. I could never hate you. I have questions, yes, but I realize you were just a teenager caught in an impossible situation. Her forgiveness, so generously offered, opened something within me. For the first time since the accident, I cried freely, letting go of 17 years of guilt and regret. Rachel, who had been monitoring my vitals, quietly stepped out of the room to give us some privacy. As my emotional wounds began to heal, the slow journey of recovering physically continued as well. The surgeons had done a fantastic job on my leg, but the path to full mobility would be a long one. Physical therapy sessions were tough, often leaving me drained and disheartened. You are making remarkable progress, Dr. Foster reassured me during one of my follow-up appointments. Many patients with your injuries would still be confined to bed. I have strong motivation, I replied, glancing at Aurora, who had started attending my therapy sessions to offer moral support. Benjamin came by again with updates about the inheritance situation. Given the circumstances, I think we should talk about how you want to manage the estate, especially considering Aurora's connection to you. I had been pondering this a lot. Uncle Samuel left everything to me because he was unaware of Aurora. Had he known he had a great niece, I believe he would have included her. So, you want to divide the inheritance? Benjamin asked for clarification. Yes, equally. Aurora immediately objected. Dylan, no. That money is yours. I never sought you out for financial reasons. I know that, I assured her, but you are family, my family, and I have 17 years of birthdays and Christmases to make up for. 2 weeks after Adrian's arrest, I had a visit from Detective Laura Jennings, the officer in charge of the case. "We discovered something troubling while executing the search warrant on your apartment," she said, placing a sealed evidence bag on my bed tray. Inside was a small bottle of pills with a pharmacy label in my name, but for medication I had never been prescribed. "These sedatives are quite potent and are frequently prescribed for severe insomnia," Detective Jennings clarified. "Based on the prescription date, they were dispensed 3 days prior to your accident." I expressed my confusion, stating that I had never experienced sleep issues before and had never encountered these medications. "We are exploring the possibility that your husband might have been administering them to you without your awareness." Several neighbors reported hearing disputes in the weeks leading up to your accident, and one noted that you appeared unusually fatigued and disoriented during your last chat. The implication was both clear and unsettling. Was Adrian planning to eliminate me even before he learned about the inheritance? Did the crash merely present a convenient chance to hasten his intentions? "We may never fully understand what he had in mind," Detective Jennings conceded. "However, you can be assured that we are constructing the strongest case we can." As my discharge date drew near, practical issues began to arise. I couldn't go back to the apartment I had shared with Adrian, for both legal and emotional reasons. Hotels were not appropriate for someone still in need of medical care and physical therapy. "You could stay with me," Aurora suggested. "My place is small, but it has an elevator and no stairs." I hesitated, feeling like I would be imposing. "It's not an imposition." "I want to help," she insisted, adding with a gentle smile, "Besides, we have so much to catch up on." Rachel, who had become a close friend during my hospital stay, had another idea. "What about your uncle's property?" Benjamin brought up. "It's currently unoccupied." The thought began to take shape. The countryside estate where I had enjoyed those few enchanting childhood days was now mine. It would require updates and adjustments to suit my recovery needs, but it provided a new beginning away from the painful memories of my life with Adrian. "It's over an hour from the city," I pondered. "Aurora, that would mean a long commute for you to the gallery." She looked down, nervously fiddling with her purse strap. "Actually, I left the gallery job last week. There were just too many memories of how Adrian manipulated me while I was there." "What are your plans now?" She paused before responding. "I've been considering going back to school. I've always had a desire to study psychology. Perhaps I could focus on assisting adoptees and birth parents as they navigate reunions." The serendipity of the moment was not lost on me. "The estate has ample space. You could stay there while you sort things out if you'd like." "Absolutely." The hopeful expression on her face was enough of an answer. From the ruins of betrayal and pain, a new kind of family was beginning to form. One based on truth and choice instead of deception. 6 weeks after the crash that altered everything, I was finally released from the hospital, and leaving the place that had been my home during this transformation felt oddly emotional. I embraced Rachel tightly, vowing to keep in touch and inform her of my progress. "You are one of the strongest individuals I have ever known," she said to me. "Remember that on the tough days?" The drive to Uncle Samuel's estate, now my estate, was peaceful. Aurora focused on navigating the winding country roads, while I observed the city slowly giving way to rolling hills and open fields. A light snowfall had occurred the night before, blanketing the landscape in pristine white, which seemed appropriate for our fresh start. The house itself was more magnificent than I recalled, a sprawling Victorian with a wraparound porch and large windows. Benjamin had arranged for modifications to accommodate my mobility challenges, ramps next to the front steps, a temporary bedroom set up on the first floor, and grab bars in the bathrooms. "What do you think?" I asked Aurora as we entered the circular driveway. "It's beautiful," she replied, her eyes wide. "Like something out of a storybook." Those initial weeks of living together required adjustments for both of us. We were mother and daughter by blood, but strangers in almost every other aspect. We moved around each other with care, getting to know each other's habits and likes, and finding our groove in this new life we were sharing. I found out that Aurora was an early riser who enjoyed singing in the shower. She realized that I couldn't start my day without coffee and preferred to have some quiet until I had my second cup. These small discoveries gradually created a connection between us. My physical recovery progressed with home visits from a physical therapist 3 times a week. The pain was persistent but changing, with sharp stabs giving way to dull aches as my body slowly mended. I transitioned from a wheelchair to a walker, and then to crutches, with each step being a small victory celebrated with cupcakes that Aurora would bring from the local bakery. The emotional healing was more complex. Dr. Jessica continued our therapy sessions through video calls, assisting me in processing not just Adrian's betrayal, but also the unexpected return of the daughter I had given up. She warned me that relationships formed under extreme circumstances can be both intense and delicate. She advised me to give myself and Aurora time to cultivate a lasting bond. Following her guidance, Aurora and I started to create rituals that helped make our unusual situation feel more normal. We had Sunday movie nights, tried new recipes on Thursdays, and took daily walks around the property as my mobility improved. We discussed everything and nothing, filling in the 17-year gap in our shared past. One evening, about 3 months after moving to the estate, Aurora nervously broached a topic we had both been avoiding. "I would like you to meet my parents," she said. "My adoptive parents, I mean." My stomach knotted with anxiety. "Do they hate me?" "No," she replied firmly. "They have always spoken of you with respect. They understood you were in an impossible situation." The meeting was set for the following weekend. I spent days fretting over what to wear, what to say, and how to express my gratitude for raising the daughter I could not keep. When the day finally came, I was a bundle of nerves, pacing the front hall with my cane. Mark and Diana Laurent turned out to be just as Aurora had described them, kind and unpretentious individuals who welcomed me with warmth instead of judgment. "We have always seen ourselves as the guardians of Aurora until you could re-enter her life." Diana mentioned this to me over tea. "We are incredibly thankful that this day has finally arrived, even amidst these challenging circumstances." Their generous spirit left me feeling humbled. Rather than viewing me as a threat to their bond with Aurora, they embraced me as a new member of their family. By the end of their visit, we had made plans for holidays and future get-togethers, further expanding our unconventional family. Meanwhile, the legal battles against Adrian continued to loom over our new life. I attended court hearings as needed, confronting him across the courtroom with a strength I never knew I had. He had lost the magnetic charm that once characterized him, now appearing sullen and diminished in his orange jumpsuit. When he was finally sentenced to 8 years for fraud and related offenses, I felt no sense of satisfaction. Just a quiet relief that this chapter was truly coming to a close. "Do you still love him?" Aurora asked me once after a particularly tough hearing. "No," I replied honestly. "I grieve for the person I believed he was, but that person never truly existed. He was merely a character Adrian crafted, much like one of his paintings." As the seasons shifted, so did the estate. We planted a garden in the spring, turning the once neglected grounds into something vibrant and full of life. I discovered unexpected joy in nurturing these growing things, perhaps because it mirrored my own rebirth. Following Benjamin's financial guidance, we set up a charitable foundation in Uncle Samuel's name, aimed at supporting young single mothers and advocating for ethical adoption practices. The irony of utilizing my inheritance in this manner was not lost on me, but it felt like the right way to create meaning from my own painful experiences. Aurora started university that fall, commuting to her classes while still living at the estate. Her enthusiasm for psychology was clear in her approach to everything, always pondering the deeper reasons behind actions and decisions. "You would have made a terrible artist's wife," she remarked one evening as we relaxed on the porch, watching the sunset. "Too practical, too grounded." "Yet I attempted to be one for 7 years," I responded with a rueful smile. "Because you believed love meant supporting someone else's dreams at the cost of your own." Her observation resonated with me. "When did you become so wise?" "I had great parents," she replied simply. "All 3 of them." As my physical recovery reached a plateau, I began to reflect on what I wanted for my own future. The advertising career I had chased primarily to support Adrian's artistic aspirations no longer interested me. With financial stability now guaranteed, I had the opportunity to completely reinvent myself. I began writing, initially as a form of therapy, but eventually with a more serious purpose. My story, while fictionalized, was emotionally authentic and began to evolve into a novel. The process was healing, turning pain into purpose. 1 year to the day after the accident, we hosted a small gathering at the estate. Rachel came along with Benjamin Detective Jennings, Dr. Valeria Melanie, and Aurora's adoptive parents. These were the people who had stood by us during our darkest moments, now sharing in the light. As I surveyed the faces of this unlikely family we had formed from the ruins of betrayal, I was struck by the peculiar magic of life, its capacity to transform lead into gold if given enough time and pressure. "I want to propose a toast," I said, lifting my glass. "To unexpected journeys and the individuals who guide us through them." Later, as Aurora and I sat alone on the porch steps after everyone had left, she posed the question that had been on both our minds. "Do you ever regret it?" It wasn't the adoption that affected me, but everything that unfolded after the accident, the discovery of Adrian's betrayal, and all the pain that followed. I thought long and hard before I replied. To feel regret suggests I would opt for a different route if I had the opportunity, but I wouldn't. Not if it meant missing the chance to find you again. Money has a way of revealing people's true natures, peeling back the layers of pretense to show what lies underneath. Adrian's betrayal imparted that painful lesson to me. Yet, it also led me back to you. My daughter offered me a second chance at a relationship I believed was lost forever. Often, the most challenging times in our lives create openings for the best experiences to come in. The accident that shattered my body also healed my heart. The husband who deceived me inadvertently brought me back to the daughter I had mourned for 17 years. The inheritance that made me a target also provided me the freedom to reconstruct my life on my own terms. As the stars twinkled above us, I came to understand that true wealth isn't about the millions in my bank account, but rather the genuine connections I forged in the wake of disaster. I lost a husband but gained a daughter. I lost illusions but found clarity. I lost my previous life but gained one that is infinitely more authentic and fulfilling. What are you pondering? Aurora inquired, noticing my quietness. Sometimes, you have to endure a crash to find your way back home. Have you ever faced a betrayal that ultimately brought something positive into your life? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales of resilience and unexpected second chances. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that even our darkest moments can lead to a new dawn. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, and remember that sometimes our greatest strength arises from our most vulnerable moments.